The CEO's office at Vitalis Biotech is cold, impersonal, and a stark contrast to the 18 years of blood, sweat, and discoveries I dedicated to the company. The new CEO, Daniel Graves, doesn't even look me in the eye as he slides the termination agreement across the table, along with a severance package that would barely cover a year of my research. Vitalis thanks you for your services, Dr. Carter. But science alone doesn't sustain a billion-dollar business, he says with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. His tone is hollow courtesy, as if I were just another employee, not the mind behind CerebraPlus, the drug that propelled the company to the top. My name is Evelyn Carter. I am 48 years old, a neuroscientist, former director of research at Vitalis Biotech in Boston, Massachusetts, creator of CerebraPlus. I was abruptly and humiliatingly fired by the new CEO, Daniel Graves, after 18 years of dedication to the company. The mind behind CerebraPlus, a revolutionary drug that turned Vitalis into a billion-dollar giant. I held the paper with steady fingers. I had expected this. But what Daniel doesn't know is that while he was plotting his move, I had already made mine. Hidden in the USPTO files, buried under layers of bureaucracy, a patent waits like a ticking time bomb. CerebraPlus, the definitive version of the formula. And the name on the record isn't Vitalis. It's Evelyn Carter. I joined Vitalis Biotech in 2005, fresh out of my postdoc at MIT, bringing not just exceptional neuroscience expertise but a genuine passion for turning academic discoveries into real treatments. Back then, Vitalis was still a mid-sized company, led by Robert Langford, a visionary biochemist who believed science and profit could coexist as long as the former was never sacrificed for the latter. It was under his leadership that I thrived, heading the team that developed CerebraPlus, a groundbreaking drug for neurodegenerative diseases. The drug's success turned Vitalis into a pharmaceutical giant, but it also marked the beginning of a silent, dangerous shift. When Robert retired in 2020, the board brought in Daniel Graves, a former executive from a big pharma corporation, known for maximizing profits at any cost. Under his command, Vitalis began prioritizing immediate financial returns over innovative research. Long-term projects were cancelled, teams were downsized, and the pressure for quick results became unbearable. I, used to working with creative freedom, found myself increasingly cornered by absurd targets and questions about the cost-benefit of my research. That's when I realized my work was no longer safe. Daniel saw CerebraPlus only as a cash cow, not as a scientific breakthrough that could be improved. When he started pushing for an updated version of the drug, without understanding its complexity, I decided to act. In secret, using a private lab and resources outside corporate hours, I developed CerebraPlus XR, a significantly more effective version with fewer side effects. I no longer trusted Vitalis to protect my creation. With the help of Sophie Mercer, my lawyer and longtime friend, I filed the patent under my own name, ensuring that if the company ever tried to push me out, I'd have an unexpected ace up my sleeve. The humiliating termination only confirmed I was right. Now, the tables were about to turn. I hadn't reached this position by chance. I knew the pharmaceutical industry better than most, and in a world where patents were worth more than lives, protecting myself was crucial. From the first signs that Daniel Graves intended to sideline me, I began working behind the scenes. With restricted access to Vitalis' advanced labs after hours, using personal equipment, and funding part of the research with my own money, I meticulously perfected CerebraPlus. The result was CerebraPlus XR, a more stable formula, with 40% greater bioavailability and drastically reduced side effects. Everything was documented in independent records, with dates, protocols, and results validated by third parties. Sophie Mercer, an intellectual property expert and my only confidant in this plan, was instrumental. She ensured that every stage of development was recorded in compliance with legal requirements, creating an unbreakable chain of evidence. The patent was filed strategically, without fanfare, but with all necessary protections. Sophie also advised me never to mention the project within Vitalis, avoiding any claim that the development had used company resources. When Daniel and his legal team reviewed my contracts before firing me, they found no loophole to claim rights over XR. They were so focused on cutting costs that they never imagined I could be one step ahead. The plan was simple. If Vitalis let me go fairly, acknowledging my contributions, I would never use the patent as a weapon. But if they tried to erase me, as they did, the USPTO would reveal the truth at the worst possible moment for them. I never wanted to destroy the compan, only to rebuild it. But I was willing to prove that without me, Vitalis would never be the same. And when the official launch of CerebraPlus XR was announced, the entire market would discover that the true owner of the technology was no longer under their roof. The day of the CerebraPlus XR announcement was carefully orchestrated by Vitalis's marketing team. Daniel Graves led a lavish press conference, broadcast live to investors and journalists, promising to once again revolutionize the treatment of neurodegenerative diseases. The slides displayed projections of billion-dollar sales, and the tone was one of absolute triumph. However, as Daniel spoke, a reporter from the Financial Times received a confidential tip. The U.S. Patent Office had updated its records that morning, and the XR patent did not belong to Vitalis. The news spread like wildfire. Within minutes, investor screens flashed red alerts as Vitalis's stock plummeted in real time. Daniel, still on stage, received a frantic message from his aide, but it was too late. Journalists began shouting questions. Is it true the patent belongs to Dr. Evelyn Carter? Did Vitalis try to steal technology from its former employee? Cameras captured the exact moment Daniel's smile turned to panic. Behind the scenes, the board went into crisis. Miriam Shaw, the board chair, demanded immediate explanations, but Vitalis's legal team had no answers. They had checked the records months earlier, and there had been no mention of XR. Sophie and I had planned everything so the patent would only become public once Vitalis made its fatal mistake. Meanwhile, I watched the chaos unfold from my apartment, glass of wine in hand. I didn't have to say a word. The facts spoke for themselves. Social media exploded with support for me, while experts questioned Vitalis's practices. In less than 24 hours, the company lost 30% of its market value, and Daniel Graves was summoned to an emergency meeting. His dream of turning Vitalis into a machine for quick profits had crumbled, and the person he had underestimated was the only one who could fix the situation. The chaos at Vitalis reached unsustainable levels. With its stock in freefall and the company's credibility in ruins, Miriam Shaw called an emergency board meeting. The only name that emerged as a solution was Evelyn Carter. Robert Langford, the former CEO who still held influence as an honorary board member, was appointed as mediator. He visited me personally at my apartment, accompanied by Miriam without Daniel's corporate arrogance, only with respect and the candor of someone who understood the value of my work. Robert didn't come with empty promises. He presented the numbers, the stock crash, fleeing investors, the lawsuits beginning to pile up. But he also brought something Daniel had never offered: a concrete proposal for restitution. I would return to Vitalis, but not as a mere research director. The position would be executive vice president, with a permanent seat on the board and autonomy to establish an independent neuroscience institute funded by the company. It was a complete victory, but I didn't accept immediately. I set conditions. The institute would bear my name, the Carter Neuroscience Institute, and have full control over its research, without interference from the financial board. Additionally, Daniel Graves would have to leave the company. Robert hesitated, knowing the board still via Daniel as an asset, but market pressure spoke louder. Roberto and Miriam Shaw, pragmatic as ever, understood that sacrificing Daniel was the price to save Vitalis. The next morning, the final negotiation was tense. Now, I held the upper hand. I faced the board directly, with Sophie by my side ensuring every clause in the contract protected me from future betrayals. When Daniel learned his fate was sealed, he tried to counterattack, accusing me of broken trust, but his allies had already abandoned him. Within 72 hours, the same man who had dismissed me with disdain was forced to clear out his desk. And with the stroke of a pen, I regained control of Vitalis's future, this time, on my own terms. The day of the Vitalis Biotech shareholders meeting was marked by a tense silence in the 42nd floor conference room. Prominent investors, board members, and financial journalists awaited the announcement that would redefine the company's future. When I entered the room, I wasn't wearing a scientist's lab coat but an impeccable executive suit. My name was now officially listed as executive vice president and board member, but everyone knew I held something far more valuable than titles: control over the patent that could save or sink Vitalis. Daniel Graves, still technically CEO, tried to maintain his composure during the quarterly earnings presentation, but his voice faltered when Miriam Shaw took the floor to announce his departure by mutual agreement. The most electrifying moment came when I was invited to speak. Without gloating, I outlined the vision for the Carter Neuroscience Institute: an autonomous research center with a guaranteed 5-year budget and the freedom to pursue discoveries without the pressure for immediate profits. When a shareholder questioned whether this would hurt dividends, I responded with precise data. Under my direction, CerebraPlus XR would generate more long-term revenue than any corporate shortcut. The vote was a formality. With Robert Langford and Miriam Shaw publicly backing me, the new power structure was approved by an overwhelming majority. As applause echoed through the room, Daniel left for the last time, his dream of turning Vitalis into just another profit machine crumbling. Contrary to what many expected, I didn't smile in victory. I simply nodded, aware that the real work was just beginning. The message was clear. Science had reclaimed its place at Vitalis, and anyone who underestimated it again would make the same mistake as Daniel. Power, after all, wasn't in titles, it was in the ideas that only minds like mine could create. 1 year after Daniel Graves' fall, the Carter Neuroscience Institute inaugurated its facilities with an international symposium gathering the greatest minds in neuroscience. The glass and steel building, funded by Vitalis but entirely independent in its operations, had become a symbol of what happens when cutting-edge research and proper funding unite without corporate interference. I was now recognized as one of the most influential women in the pharmaceutical industry. Speaking to an audience of young scientists, something I'd made sure to include in the event. My tone wasn't one of vengeance but renewal. This institute proves transformative science can be done without sacrificing ethics on the altar of quick profits. Meanwhile, Daniel watched the event's coverage from his new office at a smaller company, where he'd been hired as a consultant. Photographs of me alongside Robert Langford and Miriam Shaw, smiling in front of the institute's logo, stung more than he'd ever admit. Under new leadership, Vitalis had regained its market value and scientific prestige, the exact opposite of what he'd preached. The circle was complete when the institute's first research paper, featuring groundbreaking improvements to CerebraPlus XR, was published in a high-impact journal. My name was front and center, with a small print acknowledgement thanking Vitalis for funding, ironically, the same arrangement I'd proposed before being fired. The quiet epilogue came when Daniel, flipping through a financial report, saw the announcement that my institute had established a scholarship for female scientists in developing countries. He closed the document without a word, or so I was told, perhaps unable to avoid one final thought. In his rush for quick results, he'd underestimated what truly builds lasting empires: legacies, not quarterly earnings. Meanwhile, in the institute's main lab, I analyzed new data with a diverse team, the past now distant. The ultimate victory wasn't in destroying Daniel, it was in creating something that would keep changing lives long after our rivalries were forgotten. My story transcended corporate drama to become a milestone in the pharmaceutical industry. What began as a fight for recognition turned into a paradigm case about ethics, intellectual property, and the true value of science. Economic journalists began analyzing the episode as a turning point. The moment the industry realized that stifling innovation in the name of short-term profit was a catastrophic strategic mistake. Major companies revised their intellectual property policies, fearing their own Carter case, while biotech startups used my story to attract talent seeking fairer environments. The most revealing aspect came in my speeches. In my rare public appearances as vice president of Vitalis, I never attacked Daniel personally. Instead, I focused on the structural lesson: no company that treats its scientists as disposable deserves a future. This stance, more than any legal or financial victory, solidified my reputation. When asked if I considered my journey an act of revenge, I corrected: revenge would have been destroying them. I saved them from themselves. That's redemption. The Carter Neuroscience Institute became my tangible legacy, but the intangible impact ran deeper. A generation of female researchers saw in me proof that it was possible to challenge powerful structures and win without losing integrity. The industry, in turn, learned that erasing scientific contributions was self-sabotage after all. As I proved, truly revolutionary ideas always find a way. Everyone was transformed. Vitalis rediscovered its original purpose. Daniel Graves became a living cautionary tale about corporate greed, and I achieved something rare. I changed the rules of the game without stooping to them. My triumph wasn't about winning a battle but redefining what victory meant, not by the power taken, but by the future built. 2 years after founding the Carter Neuroscience Institute, a young researcher named Priya Mehta walked through the glass lobby of the main building, carefully clutching a folder of her projects. She'd been the first recipient of the Institute's scholarship for women in STEM, and today she'd present her work to me, Dr. Carter. Waiting in the main lab, she studied the framed photos on the wall. Snapshots of CerebraPlus XR's development, scientific articles, and, discreetly, a small copy of the patent document that changed everything. I arrived quietly, wearing a simple lab coat over my executive suit. "Show me what you've brought," I said, skipping formalities. When Priya explained her research on new Alzheimer's approaches, my eyes gleamed with intimate recognition, the same spark I'd had decades ago when Robert Langford gave me my first chance. As we discussed adjustments to the experimental protocol, an assistant brought a memo. Vitalis wanted approval for new equipment funding. I signed swiftly but kept my focus on Priya. "This is promising. I want you to lead a study group in the next phase," I declared, handing her a blue access card, the same kind I'd used when it all began. Outside, beneath the institute sign, a group of students took photos. Among them, a short-haired girl held a copy of the magazine that had featured me on the cover. She glanced at the building, then at the magazine, and smiled. The cycle was repeating. In a top-floor meeting room, the fading light glowed on the CerebraPlus XR evolution chart, now with a new branch, Project Priya preliminary phase. Science, after all, never ended. And my true legacy wouldn't be measured by what I achieved, but by what I inspired others to accomplish. Power cannot be usurped. It is conquered with knowledge, strategy, and above all, the courage to change the game. Evelyn Carter proved that even in a world of giants, a brilliant mind and determination can rewrite the rules. If you believe in stories where intelligence triumphs over arrogance, subscribe to the channel and become part of this community. Like this video so that more people can discover inspiring stories, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next chapters of those who challenge the system and win. After all, the next one to redefine the rules could be you.